Sure. Hi, Jessica.
All right, I think we can begin just because we don't want to, cut short on our time here. So like I said, if anyone wants to turn on their cameras, that's totally fine. Excuse me. And then I guess I'll start. So thank you, Dr. Haya, for joining us. Just for
You're
everyone's
you're frozen, so I can't really hear you. I don't know if it's from.
Let me see, maybe it's my internet.
Hello?
Okay, can you hear me now? Can everyone hear me
Yes.
now? Okay, perfect, perfect. Zabardast. So, Dr. Haya, thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. For everyone's benefit, we are joined here today for our EDU talk with Dr. Haya Mizyed. Dr. Haya is an internationally recognized, award-winning early stage researcher,
And
educational
hi, Shay. I
consultant.
don't know if it's from your end or my end.
Oh, um, all right. Let me try one. I'm gonna try leaving the meeting and rejoining, and then hopefully it will resolve. So just give me 1 second.
Hello, Haya. Um, while Aisha is joining, let's see. I'll just let you know if you can hear me. I'll just let you know that internet in Pakistan has been extremely poor the past couple of months. And the reason why most people keep their videos off is because it just doesn't operate, Zoom doesn't operate very well with videos on. So just letting you know we have these issues.
Oh, you're muted, Dr. Haya. Okay, I'm back, and hopefully everyone can hear me. Please do let me know if please let me know if I get frozen again or if something like that happens. So, okay, great. So we are joined here today by Dr. Haya Mizyed, who has graciously taken out time from her very busy schedule to speak to us. Dr. Haya, as I was saying, is an internationally recognized award-winning early stage researcher, educational consultant, and an assistant professorial lecturer. She's a published author with a doctorate in mind, brain, and teaching from Johns Hopkins University, USA. She's currently based in the UAE, where her work focuses on enhancing pre service teachers' pedagogical practices through innovative, culturally relevant professional development models. She's an active member of the International Honor Society in Education and the International Mind, Brain, and Education Society, which further showcases her passionate advocacy for bridging cognitive research with educational policy and practice. We're honored to have her with us today as she discusses her model, the Brain Targeted Teaching Model, or BTT, and how it can be used to optimize learning environments. So, with that, over to you, Dr. Haya. Take the floor, and excited to hear from you.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you, everyone. A bit about what's happening in mind, brain, and education. me know if I start lagging or you need me to repeat something. I will keep my camera off. Although I love seeing faces and it's so important for me to keep cameras on. So I just get a better sense of what's happening in education, an overview of where we are and where we're going with it, and how using what we know about the latest in neuroeducation, cognitive science, and the learning sciences, a lot of vocabulary, I know, and how we've actually practically applied it. And that BTT model can be used from KG all the way through higher education. I'm sharing a QR code, and what this QR code will is it's kind of a Google folder that has
Dr. Haya, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but it seems that all of us are experiencing breaks in your voice. So there's parts where, oh, I think she's trying to rejoin the meeting. Okay.
my apologies. I don't know why I was bumped off. But did you hear what I said?
Right. Dr. Hay, I'm so sorry. I don't know why you got bumped off, but your voice is breaking up for all of us, and we're in different locations. But it seems to be happening for all of us. I wonder if it could, by in off chance, that it could be the internet on
From
your
which
end.
is my, yeah, mm. What I can do is just get on my phone and see if that works. But I'm presenting from my college, which is the same office I usually present from. So I'm not sure what's going on. Let me go ahead and see if I can join through my phone. Let's see if that helps.
It seems to have improved because it was breaking
Yeah.
up every 1 or 2 seconds. It seems to be better now, so you can just go
Okay.
ahead. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry.
The background on my in education. We're going to talk about kind of the timeline, the complexities we face with that, where we are today. We're going to discuss a few neuromyths and then the practical application, which is the brain-targeted teaching model. The brain-targeted framework is a pedagogical framework that can be integrated from KG all the way to higher education. There's a QR code on the screen, and that QR code takes you to my Google Docs folder that I've created for this presentation. Everything that I reference or everything that I discuss will be supported with an article or with a chapter. And even these slides that you see in front of you are also in that Google folder. Okay. And if you don't catch the QR code now, don't worry about it. It'll show up again. All right. So the first question you may be asking yourself is why hasn't mind, brain, and education made its way to teacher training? And really, the short answer is time, complexity, consensus, and leadership. And with time, we've only existed for 20 years, so that hasn't been a long time. And I promise you, we haven't put the brakes on it, but there's so much work to be done. And right now, mind, brain, and education is considered a field. And in order to be considered a field, it needs to have goals. So we need to have policy goals and research goals. And there are a group of experts that have done an amazing job and put together these goals. And I've shared that in the folder, so you can take a look at that. But Howard Gardner said, even if we have these goals, even if we have these policies, we really, in order to consider it a field, like literally speaking, we need to have three important things, which are pretty quite simple. We need a society, we need conferences, and we need a journal. And right now we have that. We have the IMBIS, the International Mind, Brain, and Education Society. And so we've kind of worked our way as close as we can to calling it a field. But again, it's just there's so much that needs to be done, and that takes us to the complexity. So we're working as quickly as possible, and there's a lot of great researchers out there, but we have to understand that this field is international, right? And it's also transdisciplinary. It has multi-level, human multi-levels. We look at children from all different ages, and also it has translational science, which is kind of a certain group of people who can speak the languages of psychology, of education, of cognition, and of well-being. And so all of that complexity just makes it a lot harder to get to professional development training or to get to the teacher training. Consensus is another one. Consensus amongst scholars on vocabulary, for example, and being clear on neuromyths, which I will describe. Daniels at one of the IMBIS conference was talking about consensus, and he said, we can't really get far in mind, brain, and education if people are still believing, for example, there's a right brain and left brain, or that we only use 10% of our brain. And so all of those beliefs really need to be kind of dissected, and we need the efficacy to change. And when we can do that and we have a set vocabulary, we can, propel forward. And also leadership. We have, Espinosa, we have Yang, we have Daniels, who are great mind-brain education scholars. But I think that we need to see more of that in the world. So I think everybody actually could be a leader in this. So really the short answer to it is time, complexity, consensus, and leadership. And so this kind of brings us to what is exactly happening with mind, brain, and education science. And so Espinosa has put together a framework where she's kind of said, here's what we need to happen. And I'll talk a little bit more about this kind of Venn diagram in a few slides later, but it's really what we want is the intersection of what we know in psychology, what we know about neuroscience, what we know about education, and we bring them together, right? Because even when we say neuroeducation, it becomes a subset of education. And so what we want is we really want that intersection. And that is what she's put together as the conceptual framework for mind, brain, and education. So if we pull back just a little bit from this, we get two words called the learning sciences, right? And so the learning sciences are different subjects and different disciplines that come together that inform education. So what we're doing is we're taking what we know in technology to inform education, what we know from cognitive science to inform education, what we know from sociology, what we even know from anthropology, and putting those together to inform education. So it's taking those disciplines, it's taking those subjects and getting them to communicate, to collaborate in order for us to inform education. And so a great chapter that's been written by Tracy Espinosa is on the learning sciences. And what she does here is she really takes what is the end goal of the learning sciences. It's not really to inform a learning. It's really to improve teaching. So we want that dynamic, right? So we want it to shift a little bit. And so she explores a theoretical framework and she tries to build international consensus, right? And your level of understanding in this in your language. And I hope that you're able to kind of read some of this work and basically see how we can take the learning sciences, translate it into building better education, better classrooms. Another article that I really like that's pretty simple, that kind of talks about the learning sciences. It defines it, talks the mutual interests of different disciplines to better inform education. So my favorites when I was starting to learn about the learning sciences. So I've put that for you in the folder as well to support you. And so what we know about the, mind, brain, and education, where does it really come from? So we have two factors here. We have either accumulation, which is psychology plus neuroscience plus education, and it gives us the views of mind, brain, and education, or is it the intersection of education, psychology, and neuroscience? And so there's still a lot of debate, and they're going back and forth between this, and there's no real wrong answer here. From my understanding, both views are accepted. The one that I lent to a little bit more is the intersection. But again, we're seeing a lot of good work coming out of just the components being added to give us the views as well. Okay. And so if I'm going too fast, please let me know. And so basically, if we're trying to design an educational experience, one thing we need to understand is the brain. And it's kind of like trying to, and this was a great attributed to Leslie Hart, but it's kind of like designing a glove, without the understanding of the human hand. So if we want to understand how children learn, how adults learn, we need to really understand the brain. And I know that's very, very complex and very difficult, but we have made a lot of progress. And so one of the things I want to delve a little bit deeper into today is the brain targeted framework. And so the brain targeted teaching model is informed by neuroeducation, it's informed by cognitive science, and it's a 6-stage framework. And what we say about this framework is what aligns to how the brain works, right? So it's an interconnected model, just like the brain, right? So it's not linear. And so we want to make sure that when we are teaching, that we are looking at these different targets, one not being more important than the other, but they're working together as an integration. Merrill Hardiman has just published the second edition, and I have a vignette, and my research is referenced as an international research done on brain targeted teaching. I used it for a professional development plan for early childhood educators who had challenges in fostering problem solving skill development. And so I used the brain targets to help kind of change their efficacy. Right? I don't want to say impact, I don't want to use that word, but change the efficacy and improve. And again, going back to what our scholars tell us about mind, brain, and education, before we can move forward, we really need to debunk some neuromyths, what people believe is actually happening in the brain, right? And there's so many. And so it's my pet peeve. I'm not going to go in it too deeply, but I'm going to go through two of them. And I was wondering if you can join me in the chat, if you can, and just kind of tell me, what do you think? Are some people more right-brained than others? Does our brain work in different compartments? And can you just like give me what you think? Just go ahead, type it in the chat, or unmute all at the same time and just say your answer. I'm happy to hear your voices. So go ahead and just kind of tell me, do you think it's true or false? Are some people more right-brained and others more left-brained?
Hello, Dr. Hera. This is Suvira.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like there are some inclinations, but again, the muscle is built through practice. So if some people are right-brained, but they do more practices that are more inclined towards the left, then they do get better at that. But I do
Okay.
feel like there is some inclination that you're born with.
Okay. Okay. That's a very good answer.
Hey, Dr. Yeah, so I'll also go with the
Left brain,
same
but
thing.
you're saying that the different parts, depending on how well you are kind of building that skill, the stronger that part of your brain will be. And so that makes a lot of sense. But our brains do not work in isolation, right? It's an interconnected model. It's a very complicated system. Really want to refrain from saying part of the brain is responsible for this. So I want to just kind of put a big X on this part right here. And so we want to refrain from doing that and saying that a certain part of your brain, although we do attribute certain regions of the brain to certain things like the prefrontal cortex to decision making. But at the same time, we're actually seeing research that's showing that no, it's happening in many different places. Memory is stored in many different places. Miriam, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I was just talking about the second myth. I thought about it that maybe both of the myths have to be addressed at the same time. So I was talking about that compartmentalization part, that compartmentalization is actually not there. Both of the parts of the brain are actually working in sync.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like the answer given by by my predecessor, that exactly it's not that sort of compartmentalization stuff and right brain, left brain thing. It's the brain's there to be trained, and
Mm-hmm.
any and every person can train. Hence the lifelong learning
Yes.
mechanisms and the lifelong learning strategies that we are studying and then we are looking into. So that was something I wanted to share.
That's a beautiful answer, Mariam. Thank you so much. And what you're talking about is called neuroplasticity, right? So
Exactly.
neuroplasticity is the ability to keep learning. And there was actually a study that you just reminded me of that was done where, and it's a sad story, but it was a true study, but somebody that was passing away and knew that they didn't have that much time left. And they asked if we can tell you problems and then actually test your brain after you pass away. And it was, minutes before this person passed away that they did this test. And when they looked into the brain, they found that there were neurons being active even to the last second of his breath. And so the brain is there for you. It's there to protect you. It's there to support you. And it's there to guide you, right? And so it's always working. And the more you feed your brain good information, and we'll talk about that through that pedagogical framework, the more we allow for nature, the more we look at novice situations, the more we keep connecting these neurons, kind of the happier we'll be and the more connected we are. So most brain functions, it's a very complicated system, but I promise you there is no right or left brain. It is one muscle. It is connected through the coliseum, but it's still just one muscle, right? That's working day and night to support you. All right, let's take another one. And this one is a neuro myth, or is it well established? Probably so. Intelligent speculation, true or false? Making decisions with a cool head and without emotions helps you to think better. So when you tell somebody, don't be emotional, you'll make a better decision, to think better. What do you think about that one? You can take your time.
This is Shahira again. I feel like there is no way to disconnect from your emotions at any given time. So like having a cool head and disconnecting from your emotions is probably not even possible. But probably making a decision when you're well rested would be less chaotic, etc.
Oh my God, I should probably just give you the rest of my slide deck because you just pretty much said everything I wanted to say in the next slide. That was a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. Good job. What's your name, sweetheart?
It's Shahira.
Savita. Thank you, Savita. That was a beautiful answer. And you're absolutely correct. So it is impossible, which is kind of what you've said, is impossible to separate emotions and reasoning in the brain. And emotions are actually critical in decision making. And although some people think that, they need to be less emotional, no, it actually complements the process and you need to be emotional. There are no decisions without being emotional. Some people kind of have a different depth of the emotion or how they feel about it or how they articulate it. But the emotions are there and you cannot separate them, which is very interesting because that would take us to our first brain target. And so every part of you, and I left a little note there about movement and embodied cognition, and it's a little bit off. It's not really much connected, but the point being that you can get up and take a walk and see things more clearly is one thing. But decisions are not made in separation, right? Aisha, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment that when we also, the myth when it's phrased that way, and this is how we may tend to think, we're also, when we think, okay, oh, you're acting emotionally, you're thinking emotionally, we're usually thinking of more of the negative emotions. At least that's colloquially what I perceive to be the understanding. And the rest, as you said, and as Shahira said, that it's not separate. But I also think that we tend to think, oh, don't think with negative emotions. But really, what emotions are is like there's a large spectrum.
Hmm.
So it makes sense for you to be undergoing an emotion at any given time when you're thinking. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative emotion.
Okay. You were breaking up. I'm not really sure I caught everything. Um,
Oh, that's fine. I was just saying, I don't know if you can hear me now, but I was just saying that we think of emotion or thinking emotionally as thinking in a negative emotional state most of the time. And it may not be a negative emotional state that you're in, but you're always in some sort
okay,
of emotional state, and the
I'm
degree
so
can vary.
sorry. I sincerely apologize. I really
You're
cannot
fine.
make out what you're
That's
saying.
that's okay. We can get back to it at the end. That's
Mm,
fine.
I hate when this happens because what you're saying is so important, and I know it is important, and I really want to hear what you have to say. I'm so sorry that I can't. But Aisha, can I ask you please to check the chat for me? And if there's anything if there's questions in the chat, I really can't read them with the screen. But if there's questions in the chat, please let me know. And I'll be happy to answer or to comment on what's said. And so again, not being able to separate emotions from the brain decisions is the same as saying you can't separate emotions from learning. And this takes us to the first brain target. So again, it's an interconnected model. And we are saying that every part of these targets is just as important as the other. And there's a lot of research that's being done on emotion and cognition. Now, when we talk about, for example, stress, there is, research that shows that if you are under chronic stress for a long time, that you can ultimately
Shah, can you make sure it's not the admin that's bumping off Dr. Haya? Because this happened before as well. She just got kicked out of the meeting. I don't know if it's the internet on her end or SOE, but just please make sure that that's not the case.
Sure. Let me check.
Guys, just hang on a second. She is trying to reconnect. I have her on WhatsApp. I think there's maybe some issue on her Wi-Fi. But thank you for your patience and thank you for saying really great comments, by the way. I see some in the chat, Hamid and Anam. Make sure you get a chance to even respond verbally whenever there's an opportunity. This is a really great learning opportunity.
Articles. These slides are there, the timeline of, the changes in mind, brain, and education. All of that is shared. The principles of the learning sciences are there as well. And I can actually, make a recording perhaps of these slides and then share it as well. So then you can have it and you can take your time and watch it later, I guess. But okay, you can hear me, right? Everything is good now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. I just want to make sure that you can hear me.
We can hear you, Dr. Haya. I think there's a little lag, but we can hear you. Okay. Shah, if you can quickly share in this chat a Teams ka link, like a Teams meeting link. Maybe we should try a different platform because Zoom is not working very quickly. And if everyone can just join that link, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back on. I'm just suggesting, does MS Teams work?
Yes, Dr. Haya, MS Teams works. I've asked our academic team to share a link on MS Teams. They'll just put it in the chat here and I'll share it with you on WhatsApp and we can migrate to that. Just give us 2 minutes for that.
Okay, I think I got back in. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, but we are getting a Teams link, so we can just go over there once we have that. Shah,
Okay.
can you please hurry along on that a little bit?
Okay. So I will go ahead and I'll continue in the interest of time, and then just let me know if we get bumped off one more time. I'll wait for that Teams link. All right. So sorry about this. I mean, it's and it happens. All right. So establishing the emotional climate. So again, we want to be able, I was discussing stress and how chronic stress can actually impede learning and actually impede memory. And what it does is that there's actually MRI imaging that shows that the amygdala, which is responsible for fear and flight and memory, short-term memory, actually shrinks if a child or a teenager or adult undergoes chronic stress. And when we're talking about chronic stress, don't go panicking, thinking just because you have exams for school that now your amygdala is going to shrink. It doesn't work like that. It needs to be, chronic stress for a long time and very severe. Some stress is actually good, right? We know that. Stress is actually good for you. It challenges you, it motivates you, it gets you to do things quickly, right? Your mom's coming home, clean up your room. So that kind of stress is like, I don't want her to yell at me, so I'm going to clean up quickly. And so that stress is not bad stress. Okay. But again, we are saying that emotion and cognition are dependent on each other, and they're interdependent for learning. And so what does that look like on a practical level for classrooms? Basically, it helps you as a teacher to understand that a student's emotion influences the attention, motivation and cognitive processes of a child. And that's why sometimes, especially in early years, when the children are stressed or they're not happy, a teacher will say, "Oh, well, just forget about that and just do your work." And it's like, you can't forget about that. They're not connected. So in response, you need to actually foster a really good relationship where there's a lot of communication and a lot of talking that's happening to help ease whatever emotional state the child is in and help him to connect and to learn. Okay. And so a lot of teachers, what they do nowadays is they incorporate mindfulness, breathing, for example. And again, they do this at a interdisciplinary level because you need to learn to calm the child down so that he can be open to the new learning that's happening. And so one simple strategy that we see a lot in kindergarten is they'll have a little garden and they'll tell, the student who's feeling a bit overwhelmed or is kind of hyperventilating, why don't you come and smell the flowers? And the reason that we do that is because smelling the flowers is going to help the child to breathe. And breathing is connected. It's to control to your emotions. So if you want to calm yourself down, you need to breathe. And so we use those strategies and mindfulness in the classroom to kind of, bring the student back to neutral so that we are able now to provide the tools and the resources and the collaborative work to get them learning, right? And I said collaborative work because I'm big on learning and collaboration. All right. Any questions so far? Are we good? It's you guys can hear me. Everything's fine. Have I been bumped
Yes, we
off?
can. No, we can hear you
Okay.
perfectly.
I thought I was
Yeah.
going for a while and I was bumped off. Okay.
No,
All
no,
right.
no.
Perfect. And again, these are not in order, and I keep saying that because I think it's really important to understand that they're not in order. But another target that's really important is that physical environment, right? And we know that the brain responds to sensory rich environments. We know that the brain responds well to certain lighting and to certain colors, and all of that will impact. And again, just notice the word I used. I used a strong word, impact, and it does. It impacts student focus and it impacts another construct, engagement. And so for example, one of our projects at HCT for the students is designing a math-rich classroom. And when we talk about designing the classroom, one of the important words we discuss is engagement. Is how is the setup of the classroom going to engage the learner? And this is the same from, again, KG all the way through high school, right? And so we want to make sure that we are allowing for an environment that is visually appealing, the color contrasts, plants in the room, all of that really just helps to kind of calm the child down, but also help to engage him in the work that's being done. One other point I want to make is we have something called the, second teacher in the classroom. We have the first teacher, and then in Arabic, we have something called the second teacher. And what we're referencing when we say the second teacher, and I think this is cross-cultural as well, we are referencing the environment. So how well is the environment conducive to the learning? How well does it support flexible seating? How much autonomy does a student have? And when we talk about the environment, it's not just the classroom, right? Let's not forget the outside space. Let's not forget the library. Let's not forget all the other areas of a school that is considered the environment. And we could even extend that a little bit more to home, right? What does it look like at home? All of those are, moving parts that are important to the child's learning. All of it is affected. And so the more space, the removal of clutter, the minimizing distractions, it really helps with focus and attention. And I'm sure for you in college, you can minimize focus and attention by, being less distracted. And even if that means turning off your phone, right? The latest research that came out says that so much more focus, so much more prefrontal connection can be made if your phone is actually turned off. Even if your phone is next to you and you're not looking at it, turning it off just makes such a big difference in the learning. So I hope your phones are turned off for this presentation. But I'm learning to do that too, turning off my phone and just setting it aside. And what's happening at that time is that your brain is not constantly reminding you that, oh, there's a message, go take a look at it. Oh, somebody just sent you a snap, go take a look. So it's really allowing you to kind of let go and completely put your focus on what you're doing. And that is all a part of the environment. Okay. Moving on to the third target, it's really about the learning experiences. So what kinds of learning experiences are you allowing for the child in the classroom? How are you designing a meaningful learning experience? And so one strategy that is supported by cognitive science is scaffolding, right? So Vygotsky tells us a lot about the more knowledgeable other and the steps to learning, but Bruner coined the word scaffolding, and it really means just a step-by-step instruction on helping the child to reach that independence and basing it on the cognitive development of the child. It's where is he making a baseline, thinking about activities you can do to get him to the next step, and then finally to where you want him to be. Part of this learning experience is to always make sure that you are integrating real world applications, just like when I talk about the phone, when I told you the story about the man that passed away, that they were testing his, prefrontal cortex and neural connections. All of those are real world applications that help you to learn, and it helps you to connect. And so because it's connected to emotion. So now when I told you that story, there's some kind of emotion that probably hit you at that moment, and that would help you with memory as well. So it's all kind of interconnected. And of course, using, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic approaches to learning, all of these really help with the learning experience. So we don't just want the student to be told this is what you need to do. It's that process and that ability for you to allow them to go through that learning process to learn. And the more they use their senses, the more you yourself use your senses and walk and movement, the better definitely the learning experience. So moving on to teaching for mastery, repetition and practice help consolidate learning. And we know that. We know retrieval practice is super important as well. And so providing, structured learning and learning experience that allow for feedback and reinforcement. And these are a lot of constructs that I'm going to, vocabulary and jargon that I'm using today. And it takes time, even when we talk about feedback. What kind of feedback are you giving? What does the feedback look like, right? If we say to somebody, good job, is that saying as I think you did great work here because I see, full paragraphs with details and you supported your claim with research. So it's really well done, telling them why they were doing a good job. So even the feedback itself has like kind of a lesson on its own on what to do and what not to do. I was told by my students that I give them good feedback. They say I do it like a sandwich, and that's genuinely how I do it. I really give feedback by, of course, saying all the good things first, and then putting in the things that they can improve, and then closing it off with more good things. And it just really helps for the receiving end. People don't like to be criticized, and people have different insecurities, and so you don't want to tap into that. You actually want to encourage and motivate. So even the level of feedback and the type of feedback is important. Formative assessments is a way to kind of check on the learning. So a lot of retrieval practice can happen with formative assessments. Now there's a difference between formative assessments and summative assessments, right? And so formative assessments is that ongoing check. So it's the feedback that you're giving. Feedback, for example, is a type of formative. And you can do quizzes and you can quiz yourself. And all of that retrieval practice is important for mastery. Part of mastery in the Make It Stick book is really well conveyed when they talk about you need to forget to know that you know. You can't keep it in your short-term memory, just like you're taking an exam, for example. You're studying all these theories, and then once you leave the exam, one day later, it's gone because it's in the short-term memory. So in order for us to make sure that you've learned it, you need to actually forget it. And then if you can retrieve it, then you know it. That's how we know it's really locked into your memory. And so you want to think about that when you're designing lessons. I think some of you are teachers in this room or leaders when you're designing or instructing for schools. And so spaced retrieval has been known to, again, that's forgetting to remember. And that all, of course, enhances long-term memory. I think I went a little ahead of myself with that one. Okay. And teaching for application. For me, this is a big one. And I focus on this a lot. A lot of our projects are application of learning. I don't believe you've learned anything if you can't apply it. If you cannot apply the learning, for me personally, as an educator, I feel that you haven't learned it, right? And so you really want to make sure that a part of that framework, part of that teaching, a part of that subject that you're trying to get across has a big component of application. It's the student's ability to apply it that would show you whether they really know it. It's that deep understanding of it, right? And so it's important to always facilitate the learning for these opportunities. Part of our program at HCT has the, theoretical component, and then we have the practical component where they have to go out to the labs, which are the schools, which are the early childhood centers, nurseries. We even have K-5 schools and high schools. Just really depends on the level of the student. We send them out there to apply the learning, and they use that lab to apply the learning and bring back all the knowledge. Okay. And so this can be done through encouraging project-based learning, inquiry-based approaches, and so on and so forth. And so, of course, we're never going to move away from this, and we're always going to need to evaluate learning, and it is important. But how do we evaluate learning? Right? How do we evaluate learning? So is it a paper and pencil, or is it an oral presentation? What kind of modes do you allow for the student to kind of evaluate the learning? And then we have the teacher evaluating the student, and then we have the student evaluating the student, and then we have the student evaluating the self. And so we have big components of these as part of our program as well here at HCT. And so that is really important, is that you are self-evaluating, you're setting your own goals, you are reflecting on that, and part of that helps change and growth. And so it's a big part that supports metacognition, that supports you in continuously growing. And so you need to look inward. And so we really, a lot of the times, design assessments that align with real world problem solving, right? We want to make it meaningful. Assessments should be meaningful. It's not a paper, I get the test score and then I leave. We need to see the students presenting and showing their knowledge and being able to apply again the learning and being able to show you how this can be applied to real world context. Anytime I teach a lesson, if I cannot connect it to the real world, I really don't want to teach it. First thing I say is, you're going to use this. Why do we need to learn this? Because I was kind of that person in schools. Why do I need to know this? And so I always answer that question for my students before we begin anything. This is important because, right? And so that's all very, very important when designing assessments. And so really bringing it full circle, kind of went a little quick through those, but I want to leave time for you to reflect and to think about what I've said. And so really the conclusion and implication for educators is that the research that we have in neuroeducation, in cognitive science, in psychology, bringing all that together to inform classroom practice, it's really supportive for children and how they learn, supports differentiation, instruction or individualized instruction. We're moving towards differentiation now, moving away, I'm sorry, from differentiation to individualized instruction and inclusive education. And really what this pedagogical framework does ultimately, even for me as an instructor, is I really believe that it allows for creativity, for creative, critical thinking and lifelong learning. So it's a constant cycle of continuously monitoring and regulating your emotions, understanding what the environment is. And you can take this to your own life. What does your environment look like? You are a product of your environment. So who you are and what you've become is a product of your environment. So who you surround around you, super important to who you become, right? And so all of this, again, is in Hardiman's 2012, and there's a new edition that came out. You can order it, you can pre-order, but actually doesn't get put on the shelves until April. So it's coming pretty soon. That's exciting. And so I'd like you just to take a minute and do what we call the 3-2-1 reflection. And I'd like you please to unmute because I didn't get a chance to see your beautiful faces, and I feel, so bad that I didn't get to see you guys. But if you can tell me 3 things that you didn't know before this presentation, 2 things that you will continue to research or talk about, and 1 thing you will change in your personal or professional life based on the information that was shared. So let me just give you a few minutes to do that. And if you'd like to unmute and chat with me and just tell me what these things are, I'd love to hear it.
I want to share the one thing that I'll change, like my professional life. I always